yesterday morning, and the Herald of Free Enterprise left Dover for Zeebrugge, a fateful journey she shouldn't have made. She was replacing another ferry which is being refitted. Aboard, the scene was much like this, filmed on her sister ship. Though only half full, the stricken ferry carried a large number of day trippers. More than 100 had taken up a special offer in the Sun newspaper. By 9:30 last night, as the day trippers should have been returning to Dover, the full horror of the disaster was filtering through to waiting relatives. Day's staff at the Townsend Torrison offices attempted to coordinate what information they had.
All ships in the Dover Strait, this is Dover Coast Guard. A major rescue operation is taking place close to Zeebrugge Harbour. Vessels are requested to listen out on Channel 16.
Midnight, and Dover Coast Guards were warning all ships to keep clear of the damaged ferry.
Please keep a sharp lookout for eventual survivors. Stop.
It was a Friday night, March the 6th, 1987. The Herald of Free Enterprise had left Zeebrugge on return to Dover. When just 3/4 of a mile out of the harbour, she capsized. Many of those that had been on deck had managed to jump to safety into the sea when the ferry capsized and were quickly rescued. However, there were a great many more below deck at the time, and divers were immediately on the scene searching for survivors, some of whom were trapped in air pockets below the surface.
At the same time, 70 specialist fire officers from Kent Fire Brigade were leaving RAF Manston with heat-seeking devices to join the rescue attempt. They included 10 divers. Four hours later, bewildered relatives were desperately trying to get any news they could.
Have you got any information on a Barry Allen? He was a chef on the ship that capsized yesterday.
For most, the only means was a public telephone call to Zeebrugge.
Well, I phoned a hospital and asked for if they'd heard anything of my mother and father, and they've only heard of my mum in hospital, and I haven't heard a thing about my dad.
Most of the crew heroically stayed on board the stricken ferry for up to 5 hours in an effort to rescue as many of the remaining passengers as possible. Some going back down as many as 6 or 7 times to try and find those who were trapped below.
They were actually breaking windows with axes. They were sending rope ladders down. They were going down rope ladders, actually to the water, pulling people out of the water, passing them up. I mean, that's you know, when you get out of a hellhole and you go back in, it takes a lot of doing.
The passengers, I mean, they were screaming, you know, you can imagine, get me out, help me. So we were putting ropes down, and we dragged a big disembarkation ladder over, and we pushed that down as well, because we wanted to push that in the water so that passengers could hold on to it while waiting to be rescued, because obviously you couldn't get them all out at the one time.
After 3 hours, we found that 7 of us, that was 7 of the crew, couldn't even pull one person up between us. So our heads wanted to, but your body just wouldn't react.
That's when I left, when there was only 5 left down there and they were dead. I asked the divers. The divers said, yeah, they're dead, you go.
It wasn't until 6 weeks after the tragedy had occurred that the Herald of Free Enterprise was eventually lifted to a degree where it would be possible to retrieve the remaining bodies and salvage the wreck. There were still at least 133 bodies on board the wreckage. The car decks were a mass of twisted metal. More than 500 people had been on board the Herald of Free Enterprise the night she capsized, and their world had been literally turned upside down. Of these, 193 had lost their lives.